I moved to a quiet suburban town just a few months ago. I was 32 at the time, hoping for a fresh start. I thought it would be a good place to focus on my graphic design work. My rental home was cute, with 2 bedrooms and an attic that seemed perfect for an art studio. I imagined all the inspiration I'd find there. On the 3rd night in the house, I was working late. Everything felt normal, or at least I thought it was. Then I heard it. Soft footsteps on the stairs, slow and deliberate. I froze. My heart raced. I thought it might be the house settling or my mind playing tricks after a long day. It felt silly even to consider anything else. I shrugged it off, telling myself it was nothing. But the footsteps didn't stop. They returned every night, a faint sound that echoed through the silence. I tried to focus on my work, but it was hard. I started hearing a soft tapping noise that seemed to come from the attic. It made my skin crawl, like someone was up there with me. I didn't want to explore it. Each time I heard those noises, I felt a chill run down my spine. The neighbors weren't friendly either. They looked at me cautiously. I didn't understand why. I just wanted to fit in. Then one evening, while I was cleaning, I found something that made my heart drop. Children's drawings scattered on the floor. They were colorful and full of life, but they weren't mine. I recognized none of them, and they felt so out of place in my home. I started to worry. Maybe it was my imagination or something left behind by the previous tenants. I wasn't sure, but paranoia started creeping in. One night I saw shadows outside my window. They moved in a way that felt wrong. When I looked harder, no one was there. I told myself it was just the wind through the trees. Then I found an old family photograph hidden in the attic, behind some dusty boxes. The people in the picture looked happy, smiling at a camera. I didn't recognize any of them, but it felt ominous. Were they connected to the footsteps? I felt like I was being watched, but by whom? I couldn't shake the fear. Every night, I lay awake, straining to hear those footsteps again. I wanted to tell myself it was nothing, but my heart wouldn't let me. I felt tiny, like a child afraid of the dark. Then came the night that changed everything. I was up late working again when I suddenly heard those footsteps creeping down the stairs. My breath hitched in my throat as I listened closely. They sounded closer. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't make a sound. I held my breath and waited. And then, just as quickly, the footsteps stopped. It was silent. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to check, but fear held me in place. I can't shake the thought that someone had been in my home, watching me while I tried to sleep. I never knew who or what those footsteps belonged to. It's something that still haunts me to this day. The next day, I was exhausted. I didn't sleep a wink the night before. My mind was sharp with anxiety, racing with thoughts. I knew I had to do something, anything, to find out what was happening in my own home. I decided to speak to my neighbor, the one who seemed to be the least standoffish. Her name was Mrs. Kennedy, and she lived 2 doors down. I knocked on her door, trying to keep my voice steady. She answered, her expression unreadable. I introduced myself, and her eyes narrowed slightly. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice cautious. I explained that I was new in the neighborhood, and I asked if she had heard anything strange. I wanted to sound casual, but my nerves twisted my words. She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder as if checking for something behind her. "It's a quiet street," she said slowly. "But sometimes, at night, the children can be heard playing." "What children?" I pressed, a knot forming in my stomach. Her eyes flicked back to me, and for a moment they softened. "Just, children that used to live here." I could practically feel the chill as it settled between us. I asked her more about them, but she didn't offer much. Instead, she changed the subject quickly and invited me to tea sometime. I thanked her and left, my head swirling with questions. Who were those children? And what did she mean, used to live here? I felt a truth hiding under the surface, and the more I thought about it, the more uneasy I became. That night, I resolved to confront my fears and investigate the attic. I grabbed a flashlight and climbed up the creaky stairs. The air was thick with dust, and the shadows loomed larger with each step. As I reached the top, I pointed the light around, revealing old boxes and furniture covered with white sheets. That's when I saw it. In the corner, a small ornate chest caught my eye. It looked ancient and out of place among the other junk. My heart raced as I walked over, wanting to see what was inside, but when I reached for the latch, doubt crept in. What if it contained something I wasn't ready for? I hesitated, but curiosity took over. I pulled the latch back slowly. The lid creaked as it opened. Inside, I found more drawings, but these looked deliberate. They told a story, of families, of children playing, and then something else. Scattered among the cheerful images were darker sketches, depicting figures in shadow. I could feel something was off. I quickly pulled my hand back and closed the chest, heart pounding. Glancing over my shoulder, I realized that the steps had returned, echoing softly down the attic stairwell. I wasn't alone. Panic surged through me, and I scrambled down the stairs, but before I reached the bottom, I could hear that soft tapping again. It was like someone was knocking, but not on the door. It was coming from my bedroom. That was when everything went dark. When the lights flickered back on, my heart raced. I was standing at the bottom of the stairs, breaths coming in short bursts. The tapping in my bedroom continued, rhythmic and insistent. My mind raced with the images from the chest. Were the drawings a warning or a memory? I stood frozen for a moment, my fear warring with curiosity. I didn't want to investigate, but I felt I had no choice. It was either face whatever was in there or spend the night worrying about it. Gathering what little courage I had left, I edged toward my bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, and a shadow flickered inside. I took a deep breath and pushed it open fully, the hinges creaking like they were protesting my entry. The room felt colder, the air heavy with an unshakable tension. I turned on the light. Nothing appeared out of the ordinary, but the tapping had stopped. I scanned the room, checking every corner, every shadow. Nothing. Just my bed, a mirror, and the remnants of my usual clutter. Then I saw it. The window was open. I rushed over to close it, feeling a chill breeze wrap around me like fingers. "What the hell?" I mumbled, pulling the window shut and locking it tight. As I turned back to the room, something caught my eye on the floor. A drawing, crumpled and dirty, lay near the bed. My heart sank as I picked it up. It was one of the sketches from the chest. But this one was different. It showed a girl with dark hair, laughing as she played in a backyard. Below her was a shadow, vast and ominous. I shivered, realizing it must have fallen out when I retrieved the chest. As I stared at the drawing, a loud creak startled me. I whipped around to see the closet door slowly swinging open. The last remnants of courage drained from me. I took a hesitant step back, unsure of what to do next. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. "Is anyone there?" No answer came, just silence. A silence that felt charged, as if something was waiting. I made a decision. I had to see what was in there. I had to know. I approached the closet and swung the door open wide. Inside was darkness, clothes hanging limply, their shapes distorted in the dim light. I scanned it quickly, my pulse racing. Then I saw it. A small figure loomed in the back corner, barely visible behind the clothes. Fear coursed through me. I stepped back to escape, but before I could turn, the lights flickered again, turning off just as abruptly as before. In the darkness, I could hear the whisper of a voice, soft but clear. "Help us." Panic erupted within me, and I turned to run, but my feet felt rooted to the spot as I strained my ears for answers. What did it mean? Who was asking for help? I realized I was tangled deeper in this mystery than I had ever intended to be. Then, from somewhere in the house, I heard the echo of children's laughter. But this laughter wasn't just playful. It felt haunting, like a chorus of lost souls. I needed to get out of the house. I had to escape before whatever was lurking trapped me in its shadows forever. I bolted from the closet, the whisper still echoing in my mind. I knew I had to move fast. The laughter was growing louder, bouncing off the walls in a way that felt almost alive. I raced toward the door, but just as I reached for the knob, the air shifted. I froze, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. There was no way I was imagining this. I felt a presence behind me. I turned slowly, my heart thudding heavily in my chest. The closet door still hung open, an invitation to whatever horror lay within. I couldn't look, just couldn't. But I felt compelled to, as if something was waiting. I stumbled backward toward the hallway, trying to find my way out of this nightmare. That's when I noticed it. The floorboards creaked behind me, the sound unmistakable. It was a heavy footfall, slow and deliberate. My heart raced again, pounding defiantly against my ribcage. It felt so close. "Who's there?" My voice was shaky, a mask for my terror. No response, just silence, a silence that seemed to hold its breath with me. I flicked the light switch. The bulb flickered once, twice, before the room fell into darkness again. My breath caught in my throat. A whisper of wind rustled through the room, carrying with it a chill that seeped into my bones. I turned and bolted. I had to escape. I had to find safety. I charged down the hall, skidding to a halt at the top of the staircase. The laughter had stopped, replaced by an almost imperceptible sobbing. I took one cautious step down, then another. Each creak of the wood below me felt like it was echoing into the void. Suddenly, from the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of movement. There, at the bottom of the stairs, a child, a small figure stood there, just out of reach of the light. I squinted, forcing myself to focus past the shadows. It was a girl, her dark hair shrouded in mystery. She looked up at me, her eyes wide and pleading. I opened my mouth to speak, but no sound came out. "Help us," she whispered again, her voice weaker this time. She extended a small hand toward me, her fingers trembling slightly. I felt a tingle of dread as her other hand slowly pointed back into the depths of the house. Without thinking, I grabbed the banister, my knuckles white with terror. "What do you want?" I shouted, louder than I intended. "What do you need?" As if responding to my fear, the shadow behind her grew larger, stretching along the wall like a great beast awakened. I stumbled back, my instincts screaming for me to run. The girl's face shifted. A flicker of something dark flashed in her eyes, like a window peeling back to reveal a storm within. "Please," she said softly, her voice cracking. Then, without warning, all the lights flickered back on. I blinked, adjusting to the brightness as my heart raced. But when I looked back, the girl was gone. The laughter returned, echoing through the hall, this time sharper, more chaotic, a cacophony of distress and despair. I was alone in the house, and yet it felt inhabited. Before I could process my next move, the front door creaked open, swinging wide with a slow, deliberate motion. I squinted into the hallway and, standing in the doorway, I saw her again, the little girl. Her lips curled into an unsettling smile. "Come play with us." And that was when I knew I couldn't stay any longer. I took one last glance back at the staircase before rushing through the door, desperation pulling me forward into the night. I needed answers, but now I feared there would be a cost. The chill in the air bit at my skin as I stepped outside. I didn't dare look back at the house. I just started walking. Each step felt heavy, as if the ground below me was reluctant to let me escape. The laughter and the girl's haunting invitation echoed in my mind, tugging at my nerves. I needed a plan. I couldn't just run away without understanding what happened. My heart raced as I remembered the strange laughter, the sobbing, and the girl's desperate plea. Who were they? What did they want? I decided to head to the one place that might have answers, the library. Maybe there was something in the local history that could explain the shadows lurking in my home. The library was only a few blocks away, but it felt like a marathon as I hurried along the dimly lit street. I shoved the door open, the familiar smell of old books wrapping around me like a blanket of comfort. I made my way to the computer terminals, my fingers trembling as I typed in the keywords haunted houses, disappearances, and ghost children. As I scanned the results, my heart sank. Most articles were about urban legends, ghost stories that chilled the bone but provided little help for my situation. Just as I was about to give up, one headline caught my eye. Tragedy at Maplewood House, the Lost Children. I clicked hastily, my breath catching in my throat as I read the grim details. The article described a family that had lived in my house decades ago. 2 children, a boy and a girl, had vanished without a trace one summer evening. Neighbors reported strange laughter coming from the house leading up to their disappearance. I felt a knot form in my stomach as I recalled the girl's plea, the shadow that seemed to grow behind her. Could these be the same children? Were they trapped, unable to move on? As I delved deeper, I pieced together fragments of a larger story, unfinished business, lingering regrets, and whispers of darkness that never fully let go. What if they needed my help? Before I could process this heavy realization, a sudden noise yanked me from my thoughts. A loud crash echoed from the back of the library. My breath quickened. I glanced around. The other patrons seemed absorbed in their own worlds. But my heart knew better. Something was wrong. When I turned, my eyes darted to the source of the sound. It was a door slightly ajar, a dark abyss peeking through. My legs moved of their own accord, bringing me closer. As I approached, shadows flickered in the narrow space, a hint of movement just out of sight. I hesitated, my instincts screaming for me to turn back. Then I heard it, a soft cry, almost like a whisper. Please, help us. The air thickened with tension. I felt the need to discover who or what was behind that door. But with every step, fear clawed at my insides, questioning if I was ready to confront whatever awaited me. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open wide. And that's when I saw it. A flicker of pale light, illuminating the outline of a figure in the dark. The girl stood there, her eyes pleading, her form flickering like a candle in the wind. Come play with us, forever. I froze, realizing I had crossed a line I could never uncross, and I was about to find out just how deep the darkness ran. The light flickered, casting eerie shadows around the cramped space. I wanted to step back, to slam the door and run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. The girl's pleading eyes locked onto mine, a desperate spark waiting for my response. What do you want from me? I managed to stutter, my voice barely above a whisper. Help us, she repeated, her tone laced with a sadness that ached in my chest. We can't leave. Before I could process her words, the darkness surrounding her seemed to churn and shift. I instinctively took a step back, my heart pounding. What was I really seeing? Was she a ghost? A figment of my imagination? My mind raced as I tried to make sense of everything. The laughter, the cries, and now this girl trapped in shadow. Why can't you leave? I asked, my voice trembling. Because of him. Her voice cracked. Behind her, I caught a glimpse of something shifting in the dark, a taller, darker shape, looming just out of reach. My breath hitched. Was there someone else in there with her? The man. He won't let us go. She looked down, her expression filled with despair. He keeps us here. Who is he? I asked, stepping closer despite my better judgment. The air was thick with unease, yet I felt a strange pull to know more. I wanted to help her, to understand what had happened to those kids so many years ago. He took us, she whispered, her gaze falling to the floor. The night was dark. We played, we laughed, and then we never came back. I thought about the article, about the summer evening when the 2 children vanished. A chill raced down my spine. It wasn't just about those lost kids, it was about something darker that had ensnared them. I couldn't turn away. They needed someone, and if I didn't act fast, who knew what would happen next? "Can you show me?" I asked, almost surprised at my resolve to confront the unknown. "Show me how to help you." Her eyes widened, a glimmer of hope breaking through her fear. "You must be careful. He is powerful." Suddenly, the lights in the library flickered violently, casting chaotic shadows that seemed to grow longer and more aggressive. I stared in terror at the door. It slammed shut on its own with a deafening bang, and I felt the ground shake ever so slightly beneath my feet. Before I could react, the figure behind her stepped into the light. It was a man, but not fully formed, more of a shadow than flesh. My stomach turned as his dark eyes locked onto mine. A chilling smile stretched across his face, revealing nothing but empty darkness. "Welcome to my little game," he said. His voice echoed like lost whispers. "Why don't you stay a while?" That was when everything went dark, and I was engulfed in a void far worse than I had imagined. I felt weightless, as if I was floating in a sea of nothingness. Panic clawed at my throat. Then, in an instant, the void vanished. I found myself standing in the same library, but everything was different. The lights were off, and a thick, smothering darkness surrounded me. "Hello," I called out, but my voice dropped like a pebble into a bottomless pit. I took a cautious step forward, squinting against the black. Where was the girl? Where was the shadow man? My heart raced faster, pounding in my ears. I remembered the girl's words. "Be careful, he is powerful." I felt a shiver run down my spine at the thought. I had to get out of here. I turned around to find the door, but the air felt oddly heavy, like a thick curtain hanging just out of reach. I groped the wall, my fingers brushing against old, peeling paint. I had to find the light switch or something, anything to guide me. Each moment spent in the dark made me feel more trapped, more hunted. Then I heard it, soft, deliberate footsteps approaching. My breath caught in my throat. Someone was coming. I pressed my back against the wall, nearly frozen in fear, praying that whoever or whatever it was wouldn't notice me. The sound stopped, and I could hear the faintest rustle, like fabric brushing against something rough. "Is anyone there?" I whispered. Silence answered, making my heart thud louder in my chest. I strained my ears. The footsteps resumed, circling the room, slower this time. I felt an absurd urge to confront whatever it was, to prove my strength against the unknown, but my instincts screamed for me to hide. "Show yourself!" I shouted, my voice cracking slightly. The footsteps halted. Then came a low chuckle that echoed around the room. "You think you can challenge me?" The voice was low and mocking, a dark melody that reverberated off the walls. "You shouldn't have come here." I felt the blood drain from my face. This was him, the shadow man. Was he still in the room with me, or had he seeped deeper into the darkness? I desperately searched for an escape, anything that could break this nightmare. "Let the truth be revealed," he taunted, the words swirling like smoke. "You want to help the girl? You want to help them all?" "Where are they?" I demanded, finding a flicker of bravery. "What have you done?" The darkness thickened, wrapping around me like a noose. "They are mine now. You will soon join them," he laughed, the sound chilling my bones. But just as I felt despair creeping in, a faint light flickered in the corner of my vision. I squinted, spotting an old lamp, struggling to illuminate a path through the dark. With renewed determination, I dashed toward it. The footsteps followed, heavy and relentless. I reached the lamp, fumbling for the switch. My fingers brushed the cool metal, and I flipped it on. The sudden light surged through the room, scattering shadows like fallen leaves. But the man was gone, leaving only a ripple in the air behind him. Then I froze. I wasn't alone. I turned slowly, seeing the girl from before standing there, her face pale, but her eyes wide with hope. "You found the light," she whispered, a faint smile breaking through her fear. But even as I felt a surge of relief, a gnawing dread settled in my chest. There was still something lurking, waiting in the dark corners of this room, and my next move would either set us free or seal our fate. The light poured out from the lamp, casting a warm glow that barely pierced the shadows lingering at the edges. I could see the girl clearer now. She was trembling, her hands wringing together nervously. "He's still here," she said urgently, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who?" I asked, my stomach knotting again. "The shadow man?" She nodded, her eyes darting around, as if expecting him to leap from the darkness at any moment. "He can't stay away for long. He feeds off fear. We need to find a way out." "Right," I agreed, glancing around for another exit. The library felt like a labyrinth. The towering shelves seemed to loom over us, their books wearing centuries of dust. "How do we get out?" "There's a back door," she said, pointing toward the far wall where the shadows gathered thicker. "But it's usually locked." I hesitated. The thought of walking back into the dark was paralyzing, but if I stayed here, we would both be sitting ducks. "We have to try," I said, steeling myself. As we made our way to the door, the air crackled with something electric. I could feel it prickling on my skin. The lamp flickered once, then twice. "Hurry!" the girl urged, her voice tinged with panic. I reached the door, my hands trembling as I felt for the knob. It was cold, like touching a piece of ice. "It's locked," I said, frustration creeping in. "Break it open," she urged, glancing over her shoulder. Taking a deep breath, I shoved my shoulder against the door, feeling the splintering wood fight against me, once, twice, 3 times. With a loud crack, the door burst open, swinging wide into the hallway beyond. The moment we stepped through, the light from the lamp sputtered, leaving us vulnerable again. The hallway was lined with shadows, tall and oppressive. I felt the girl grab my arm tightly. "This way," she said, pulling me left into the narrow corridor. We didn't stop, our footsteps echoing ominously off the walls. The chill of the air made me shiver, but we pressed onward. "I thought the library was the only way," I said, trying to catch my breath. "How did you end up here anyway?" She swallowed hard. "I was looking for something. A book that might have information about him. That's when he found me." "Information about him?" My mind raced, linking her search and the shadow man's taunts together. "What is he after?" "I don't know," she said, her voice trembling. "But I think it has to do with the stories. He feeds on the fear because it gives him power." I felt dread blossom in my stomach again as we ran. We reached the end of the hallway where an old wooden staircase spiraled upward. "Should we go up?" I asked, glancing back down the way we'd come. "Up could be better than down," she said, her eyes wide in a mix of hope and fear. "But we have to be quiet." We climbed quietly, each step creaking beneath us. I could feel the weight of the silence growing heavier, and the air seemed to murmur with anticipation. As we reached the landing, I heard it again, the footsteps, but this time they were not ours. They echoed faintly from below, growing louder, more insistent. Someone, or something, was following us. Then everything went dark. I blinked, my eyes straining to adjust to the sudden darkness. The silence pressed in around me. "Are you okay?" I whispered, my own voice sounding too loud in the stillness. "I think so." The girl's voice trembled. "Just hold on to me." I reached out blindly and found her arm, the warmth of her skin grounding me. But that grounding faded when I heard it, a faint rustle from somewhere below. "We need to move," I said urgently. I pulled her toward the direction we had been heading, feeling the cold wood of the railing beneath my fingers. On the next landing, I saw a sliver of light and a door. "Maybe that's our way out," I said, my heart picking up speed as I led her toward the brightness. As we approached, the air thickened. It was almost as if the shadows were wrapping around us, holding us back. I glanced back over my shoulder. It felt like someone was watching, lurking just out of sight. Is it just me, or does it feel different? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. No, it's not just you, she replied, her voice shaky. But we can't hesitate now. I touched the doorknob, the metal warm against my palm. I twisted it slowly. To my surprise, it turned. With a nudge, the door swung open, revealing a small room filled with old furniture draped in dusty sheets. The air was thick with the smell of mildew, but it felt safer than the shadow-filled stairs. We stepped inside and closed the door quietly behind us. The room was silent, but the tension was palpable. I could feel my heart racing, echoing in my ears. What now? I asked, scanning the room for another exit. My mind was racing through scenarios. I didn't want to be caught off guard. There's a window, she said, pointing toward the far side, but it's sealed shut. We might be trapped here. Trapped, I echoed, the word lingering heavily in the air. Just as I was about to respond, a noise jolted my attention. A soft thud came from outside the door, and my breath caught in my throat. Did you hear that? I whispered, panic creeping into my voice. Yes, she replied. What if he's found us? Then we need to be ready. I moved cautiously toward the door, the shadows threatening to invade our space. My hand rested on the doorknob again, but I hesitated. Before I could make a decision, the door rattled violently, sending both of us to jump back. I looked to the girl, her eyes wide with fear. Then it hit me. What if this is what he wants? To corner us and feed off our fear? Just then, there was another thud, this time louder, as if someone was pushing against the door with force. I felt my pulse quicken at the thought of the shadow man breaking through. I don't know what to do, I gasped, my voice barely contained. That's when I saw it. From the edge of the doorway, a thin strand of darkness slithered in, almost like a shadow reaching out, testing the space we occupied. My blood ran cold. I backed away, pressing myself against the far wall as the shadow writhed and pulsed, reaching out like a living thing. What do we do? I whispered, panic tightening my throat. The girl's eyes glimmered with a mixture of fear and determination. We have to fight it. If we show no fear, it loses power. We can't let it control us. I nodded, though doubts churned in my stomach. But how? I could feel the air grow colder as the shadow crept closer. Focus on the light, she urged, glancing toward the window. Remember how the lamp chased it away before. Whatever we can find that gives us strength, we must use it. I scanned the room, quickly spotting an old fabric-covered lamp in the corner. Desperate, I darted toward it, the shadow slithering after me, still coiling and twisting. I yanked the lamp down, exposing its metal base, but there was no bulb. What about the sheets? The girl shouted, her voice strained with urgency. Can we use them to reflect light? Without thinking, I wrenched the nearest sheet off the furniture, dragging it along. The fabric, aged and dusty, felt heavy, but I gathered it in my arms. I can create a barrier, I called excitedly, hoping the idea could save us. As I spread the sheet out, the shadow pressed against the doorway with an eagerness that made my skin crawl. Come on, let's not give up. The girl joined me, breathing deeply to steady herself. On 3, we lift it together. She nodded. I could see the resolve in her eyes even amid her fear, and the sight rallied my spirit. 1, 2, 3. We threw the sheet forward like a makeshift shield, the torn fabric catching the flickering light from the adjoining room. For a moment, it was as if the shadows recoiled, the thin tendrils retreating as the light danced across the surface. But just then, with a crashing sound, the door splintered and the shadow surged forward, fierce and ravenous. It pushed through the remnants of our makeshift barrier, a swirling mass that engulfed the light, diminishing its glow. Keep moving, I shouted, throwing the other end of the sheet back toward the lamp and frantically searching for something, anything that could help turn the tide. As I glanced around the room again, a glimmer caught my eye. A small, dusty mirror hanging crookedly on the wall reflected a sliver of light from the lamp. I dove toward it, my instincts kicking in. The mirror! It can reflect the light back at him. The girl followed closely, her determination unwavering. Let's do it! We grabbed the mirror, using our combined strength to prop it in front of the encroaching darkness. As the shadow lunged, it met the reflection, and to my horror, a piercing shriek echoed in the room. The shadows twisted and writhed in anguish, losing their grip on the air. It was working. That's it! She cried, her voice rising in hope. But suddenly, the walls shuddered as a powerful force slammed against them. It felt as if the entire building was protesting our stand against the darkness. We need to hold it steady, I yelled, fear creeping back in. I won't let go, she shouted, her small hands gripping the sides of the mirror as we adjusted its angle, sending beams of reflected light cascading back at the menacing figure. There's so much darkness, I whispered, my breath quickening. What if he's just a part of this place? Then we have to banish him, together, she said fiercely. As we steadied the mirror, the shadow flailed, thrashing against the stone walls. The room vibrated with energy, tension crackling in the air. You're nothing, I shouted into the void, my voice resonating with a furious chant, a mix of fear and anger. We're not afraid of you anymore. The shadow recoiled, and with a final pulse of light, it splintered like glass, scattering into nothingness. The sudden silence was deafening. We stood there, panting and shaking, adrenaline surging through us. Then, just as the air settled, whispers began to swirl again, weak and distant. Help us! Help us! I turned to the girl, terror flickering in her eyes. What do they want? They're still here, she said softly, glancing toward the window where thin rays of light began to stream in from the rising sun. Do we have to stay? I felt my heart drop. I don't know, she said sadly. Maybe we can find a way to set them free. With the weight of uncertainty hanging between us, I glanced back at the shadows, faint remnants that now felt distant, almost saddened. One step back toward the door, and I hesitated, remembering everything we'd just faced. My mind swirled with questions. Had we truly heralded an end to the darkness, or had we merely scraped its surface? Would the spirits of the lost children find peace, or were they forever bound to the house and its secrets? As we stepped outside, the sun broke over the horizon, illuminating the brick facade of the library. A sense of fragile relief washed over me, but deep down, the unease churned, a reminder that some mysteries might never fully be revealed. I think I'll have to leave, I said, my voice thin with lingering doubt. The warmth of the sun felt almost surreal against the events that had unfolded. Me too, she agreed, looking back at the building. Maybe someday we can return and help them. As we parted ways, I moved forward, feeling the weight of my decisions hanging in the air. I had escaped the darkness tonight, but its echo would forever resonate within me. Maybe I was free, maybe not. I still think about the laughter, the shadow, and the girl in the dark. I sometimes wonder if her whispers will follow me wherever I go. But above all, I realize the tales we leave behind may never really fade away.